The big news right now is that the CPI is coming out on August 10th, which is Thursday at around 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time or 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. The thing is, the projected rate is 3.3 by economists, which is actually higher than July's. Now, that doesn't have good implications for crypto, especially since employment also is an all-time low at 3.5. So the economy is actually giving really positive signals, but that may not be very good for crypto because remember, we still have inflation. People are spending like crazy for some odd reason, but we still have a lot of inflation right now. The core CPI is still 4.8, and last month's official CPI is at 3.0. And that means the CPI will actually increase by about 0.3, which is a significant bump from last month. Now, last month I thought was like too big of a drop because we dropped all the way from like 3.9 to 3. And I expected us to drop from like 3.9 to 3.5. So this month we're kind of like going back a little bit. But the Fed doesn't like that because the Fed is desperately trying to control inflation right now. So they might be incentivized by this new report that they have to raise rates even more. I was really hoping that July would be the last rate hike, but if the inflation rate bounces back up to 3.3, especially if the core CPI goes up, which, the core CPI is really, really hard to bring down because housing isn't really going down. They might actually have to raise rates even more, which will actually hurt crypto. Crypto actually came down up today a little bit because the 10-year yield dropped from 4.2 to 4. But if they raise rates again in September, that means crypto is going to go down again because the rates, the yields for the bonds are going to go up in September. Remember, the bonds have a dual effect. Obviously, the higher the rates are, the more attractive the bonds look compared to other investments like crypto, especially volatile investments like crypto. But also, like the long-term bonds might actually get more people to store long-term money in those, which they can't move. And plus, the rates being high disincentivizes people to borrow money to invest in speculative things like crypto. Now, I actually do believe that you shouldn't actually borrow money for speculative investments like crypto ever. You should never actually spend more than you actually have to lose. But, a lot of people really aren't going to listen to that. And we actually do need that money to actually come into crypto to boost the price up. And a high interest rate will kind of disallow that. I mean, it doesn't really disallow it, but it basically persuades many people not to do that. So that's why this projected CPI I don't really like. Now, will it have an effect on the market immediately? I think if it's 3.3 or below, it really won't because that's kind of priced in. That's what people are bracing for right now. And that's the projected rate. Remember, it's not the actual rate. It's the actual rate compared to the projected rate that really affects the market a lot. And the projected rate's 3.3 right now. If it's on the dot at 3.3, I believe the market will go down a little bit. If it's above 3.3, I think the market's definitely going down. If it's below 3.3, we might just stay neutral. I mean, if it's below 3.0, we'll definitely go up, but I don't think they'd actually be off by that much on the projected rate. And I do believe it is going to be around 3.3, maybe 3.2. I'm hoping for like 3.1 or something. That's probably like the best case scenario because if it's 3.1, the Fed might think again before raising rates. Remember, we got to get the rent down. We got to get the housing prices down before the inflation can really come down because that takes up a large part of the CPI and that's part of the core CPI, which really, really needs to come down for US consumers and which is being extremely stubborn in not coming down. So I'm really not looking forward to the CPI report. We'll obviously talk about it on Thursday morning. And realistically, I do think like we might be in for a little dip in mid-August because of that specific report, which I'm not happy about because, with the adoption going on and everything, I was hoping that we'd actually go up, especially after last month's CPI report, but we didn't really go up all that much. I think there's a lot of other bullish factors like the ETF and stuff that's going to get approved next year. By the way, I do actually think that's going to get delayed. Even Kathy Wood thinks that's actually going to get delayed. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's going to get delayed, and I think the market expects it to get delayed. So if the ETF does actually get delayed, I would not be surprised. Do not expect the ETF to get approved on the 14th. I think you are hoping against hope if you actually do that. So the CPI, definitely I'm not looking forward to. Powell's definitely going to look for an excuse to raise rates again. I think Jerome Powell wants to raise rates one more time, and he's definitely going to use this. And I think the other Fed governors are going to actually agree with him to raise rates one more time, which means we'll have a lull in the market for about a month or two more. And that really sucks because I want the market to not have lulls. For those of you that actually are hoping for Bitcoin to dump to 15K, this isn't going to do that. I mean, like the CPI would have to jump back up to like 6 or something for that to actually happen. And that it's definitely not going to do that because I just like looked at food prices this week. They're not really, they haven't really increased since January. But gas prices are actually like swinging in the higher end of their range right now, which is probably why the overall CPI is going to be up because gas does affect everything. And the overall CPI does include gas and food. And but the core CPI does not. So that's kind of what we have for the CPI report as of today. Now, Bitstamp is stopping altcoin trading for many US users. Certain altcoins like Solana, Polygon, I don't think Cardano was in that list. I'm not exactly sure which coins Bitstamp's list. Since they're like Europe's big exchange, I'm assuming they list all the other altcoins as well. I'm not 100% sure, but they did say it was because of the SEC lawsuit. And they're not going to completely take them off, but you can't buy or trade them. You can still hold them at Bitstamp and you can withdraw them. Now, they specifically said the SEC has not actually proven their case in a court of law, and they're waiting for Coinbase's resolution to it to see if the case actually gets dismissed. And if, of course, if it doesn't get dismissed, they're going to actually look at Coinbase to see how that lawsuit plays out. The judge in the lawsuit is not very friendly to the SEC right now, but I don't think he would actually dismiss the suit. So there is a good chance that it will actually go to trial. I really hope it gets dismissed because that would shut down the SEC and their crypto fear-mongering for good. I think if they do that, like the SEC will definitely appeal the Coinbase case, because if they don't appeal the Coinbase case, then the regulatory clarity for crypto has actually been set that all secondary market transactions will actually not be securities, and the SEC would lose pretty much all their power. And then the CFTC and the SEC can fight in Mortal Kombat to really resolve that themselves. I really don't care about what happens to those two. But right now, like if you're in Europe, well, actually, like if you're in Europe, you're probably not a U.S. citizen. But if you are a U.S. citizen living in Europe, or maybe a European that's living in the United States, you may not be able to trade those coins at Bitstamp. And the SEC obviously is continuing to wage its war against crypto over the apparent dissension from one of their commissioners in Hester Pierce. So yeah, it's still haunting us right now. For the XRP aficionados, that won't be delisted because they already decided on that case. And I hope the Coinbase case actually does get resolution. The SEC is actually not going around suing individual cryptos. They're actually just going after exchanges. But if Coinbase wins, that will stamp the SEC out and it'll make them really unable to really sue anything else. So that's why it's actually critical. If they appeal either the Coinbase or the SEC or the Ripple case, it'll take them years on the appeal. They're very unlikely to actually win in appellate court, more or less. Like while that appeal is going on, it will actually, the ruling will be the law of the land. So this is kind of like the SEC's last grasp. They can always sue coins like Hex or Terra Luna and score easy wins. But for most of the cryptos that have more purposes than just generating more of the coin itself, I do actually think like this is one of the SEC's last attempts. And I think like if you look at Gary Gensler, he's actually been trying to pivot to AI lately because he knows that the lawsuits against crypto aren't really turning out all that favorable for him. The judges in the crypto cases are getting tired of his shenanigans. And without his shenanigans, the SEC doesn't really have any tools where it can actually lengthen out the case and really screw crypto over. So I hope most of this is coming to an end. I hope the ETF argument is coming to an end. And I really hope we have some peacetime for crypto to just go up, at least next year. Not surprisingly, actually, Justin Sun just moved $200 million today. Why did he move $200 million? I think it's to save Huobi. He moved $200 million to Huobi. And I don't think there's any other reason besides like Huobi's insolvent. That part of the rumor is probably true, and he's desperately trying to save Huobi. Will he be able to save Huobi? I don't know. But it's been circulating for like years now that Huobi's actually been operating at an operational loss. They did not actually lose the investor funds. So let's get that straight. Huobi at this point has not lost the investor funds, but they've been operating at a loss for a while now. And when you operate too much at a loss, you're going to have financial troubles. I don't really know why they're operating at a loss, but they have been operating at a loss. And the rumor that their execs have been arrested by the Chinese police, I can't verify or deny that, but I'm going to almost guess that some part of it is true. Justin Sun is not part of the exec team. He is the guy pulling the strings behind stuff, but he is not part of the exec team. So he has actually not been arrested to any extent. So that's really good for Justin Sun, obviously. Because if Justin Sun gets arrested, then, we're definitely going to have some issues with Huobi, Tron, and everything else. So Tron, not really completely crashing yet. Huobi might be dead. Maybe Justin Sun can rescue it, but $200 million may actually not be enough to save an exchange. But Justin Sun is actually pulling out the big guns to try to save the exchange. And HT investors should actually be thankful that he actually really cares and he's pulling out the big guns. My guess is like Justin Sun invested a lot in Huobi himself and he doesn't want to see it go down. But if you're suffering like severe operational losses paired with a bear market, I'm not really sure what you can actually do to save the business. I hope he's actually successful. You know why? Not because I love Justin Sun, because we don't really want another fallout in the market. I mean, Huobi's not nearly as big as they used to be, so I don't think the effect from Huobi would actually be nearly as big as like Binance or Coinbase. Their market share has gradually dropped over the last few years, where I don't even think they're like really top 10 anymore. But, Huobi's a fairly well-known exchange because they are one of the OGs. And if one of the OGs went down, like people would know about it, and I think they would lose a little bit more confidence in crypto. Along with everything else that's actually happened. So I hope Justin Sun is successful in saving Huobi and this drama doesn't actually play out, but it may not work out to our liking. But anyways, I don't think it'll actually affect the overall crypto market all that much. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.